Welcome to a nice, beautiful, exciting evening of ELE podcast show. Hey.
What's the deal?
Well, we got Macadocious in the house.
We got Turk McDirt in the house. And we got King Caleb Glason.
What's the deal?
My guy. We have two special guests. Well, not really two. We have one special guest. We have Paul. He's here all the time. Paul here all the time. So he's not a guest.
They always
I'm no longer special.
Yeah, they beefing today.
Man, you special, but you know, me and
Yeah,
you.
that's how you're gonna do me.
Nah, I love you. I love you, Paul. Don't leave. Please don't leave. Don't leave. We can't let our friend and brother in arms go anywhere. But we have a very, very special guest. You know, we're in an election season. It's a word for election cycle. It's election cycle. See, man, I be knowing stuff sometimes. We have a very special guest. We have a beautiful woman. She's here just to talk to EME. She's here to let us know what she stands for, and we're here to listen. And her name is Miss LaTonya Austin Honorable.
Yes. Do you know how many people do not get that name right?
But I did it on the first time, you know. That's what we do. You know what I mean? We strive for perfection. We're not perfect, but we strive for it. So how you doing tonight?
I'm wonderful. Anytime I get a chance to talk about, not just me, but talk about stuff that's going on in our community and chop it up with some folks who actually know what's going on in the community,
Right.
That's always helpful.
Right.
I'm in my happy place, so I'm good.
Thank you so much for coming.
Not
Really
to mention, the Jimmy Johns was on point.
Oh.
So I'm real good right now. I'm real good right
That
now.
was Ran.
Thank you, Paul. Ran.
Appreciate it, Red.
Shout out to Jimmy Jones for them good sandwiches too. Shout out to
Word
Jimmy
up.
Jones.
Yeah.
What's up, Charlie Rock?
Y'all got some openings there. Send them to us. We'll market it for you.
Yeah.
Jimmy.
See you the best.
Yeah.
Yes, dinner sponsored by Jimmy John's.
Yeah.
So, Miss Honorable, you're running for circuit court judge, right?
I am.
So, what gave you the idea, the notion that I'm going to run for circuit court judge in Little Rock?
So I think it kind of came from my DNA. Let me explain that a little bit. Because I didn't always know that I wanted to run for judge. I did always know that I wanted to be an attorney. But being a judge was never on my radar because I'm a people person. I love people. I knew I wanted to do litigation. I wanted to try cases. That much I knew. And it wasn't until maybe 2013 that I started feeling like, okay, at that point, I've been licensed since 2002, practicing criminal defense, family law, probate law, civil litigation. And I just felt like the natural progression for my career was for me to do something. I still didn't know what the something was, but I knew that I needed to do something else to help protect our rights. You know, our rights as a community were being challenged on a daily basis. I was representing clients who were low literacy functioning, so they didn't even understand what was going on in the system that we were operating in. And so I kept looking for another way to make a difference. And really out of the blue, there were seats, judicial seats that were coming open, and it just kind of dropped in my spirit one day, and I was just like, okay, not what I had planned, but I got the bug. And so when the seat came open, I threw my hat in there and got to running. Yeah. And here I am. And that was, mind you, this was 2017.
Right.
So I've essentially been running for the last 4-5 years? Yep. Yeah, because there were 2 election cycles that I ran for, and I lost the first 2 elections. Third time's a charm.
It's a charm.
I think that's when I first met you. It had to been back in 2017. And she was running.
Yeah.
I remember then.
I've been running ever since.
Running ever since.
Yeah.
And nonstop.
Yep.
That means you got that fight.
I do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. I have now there's a whole story about that. We'll revisit it. Don't let me forget.
Okay.
Because it's a part of my whole story. So, but yes, I'm a fighter. In every sense of the word, I'm a fighter.
So what part of Little Rock did you grow up in?
Southwest Little Rock.
Southwest.
So
we got some homies from over there.
Yep.
yeah, well,
I went to McClellan.
I love
graduated
Southwest.
from McClellan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know.
I know.
I really know.
I'm
Bugging.
sorry.
They told us they tearing it down right now.
Yes, exactly.
I don't
Well,
like
because
that.
see, I was at Cloverdale in junior high school. So but for this, let me go ahead and tell this part of the story because it'll make more sense as we start talking. But so I was at Cloverdale Junior High School, and I was being bullied. Bullying that's nothing new.
Right.
It gets a lot of airplay now because more people are experiencing it. But I remember being at Cloverdale Junior High and I was being bullied, and so much so that I told my mom, my grandma, who was living with us at the time, my teachers, my guidance counselors, and everybody in administration at the school kept saying, well, if she hadn't fought you, if she hadn't touched you, if she hadn't, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. And my grandmother, who didn't really play that, like my grandma was like a real OG. I mean, like in every sense of the word. And she told me to get 3 big rocks and put them in the bottom of a sock and put it in my purse. So that if this girl ever came to me and approached me, that I would be prepared. Because she was like, so let's say I was probably 5 foot at the time. She was about 6 feet.
Right.
And a little bit larger than I was. So there was a real concern there. You know what I'm saying? It was a real issue. So here's the crazy part. So I did like my grandma said, Paul. I went and I looked for 3 big rocks. This story is not coming out of the Bible, by the way. It's not one of those women do a slingshot.
Sounds like Old Testament.
It does. But I couldn't find 3 rocks. But in the back of our house, my dad used to keep the toolbox, and I found 3 water pipes. They were about this big around and about that long. Well, this had to have been in the 80s. So y'all remember the drawstring blue jean bags that were just like, they're just bags. Like it's not like a purse, so to speak, but it had a drawstring. Yes, you pull the string,
I know exactly what
and it just takes the form and shape of whatever you put in the bag. Right. So that's what I used. I didn't have a sock with the 3 rocks, so I used the bag and the 3 water pipes. And so I had taken it and put it in my locker at Cloverdale because I was on drill team at the time. And so I just kept it there on campus, you know what I'm saying? Because I didn't want to keep walking back and forth with it, so I left it there. Well, she showed up to a basketball game one night, and I knew it was on because she didn't come to extracurricular activity. So yeah, she was coming for me. And so we never got into a physical altercation, but I did go and get the pipes. Vice principal was like, we can't have weapons on campus. So I ended up getting expelled from Cloverdale. Had to appeal to the school board to get back into school. So we did that. They said, we're going to let you back in school, but you can't go back to Cloverdale. So they sent me to Forest Heights. And so that's how I ended up being zoned for Central and not McClellan.
Okay.
My other 2 siblings went to McClellan. I'm sorry. But I graduated from the Little Rock Central High School. Yes, class of 1994. And so that started a different kind of fight for me, right? Because I started really understanding like systems, whether it was an administrative system, school system, criminal justice system. I started understanding all of that. That's when my eyes were really open. Right. And that started a whole nother like level of thinking for me. Right. Because I knew then that, what happens if people don't have parents like I do that would fight and go to the school board to appeal the suspension? What happens if not everyone has a Laverne Goldsby as a guidance counselor that would come and testify because she was aware of the bullying that was going on in school? And so, the whole idea of advocacy and helping and protecting people, that started very early in my childhood.
We got all grandmas.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go
get him, baby. I'm out there.
Yes. So it's been an experience with this whole fighting. You know, it's taught me so much about helping other people, because people need a mouthpiece. Right. You know, lawyers are not always the only mouthpiece for people. You know, you got pastors, you got community leaders, you have people like, you know, you all who are just out helping people who either can't put the words together or they don't know what to say, what to ask for. So advocacy is always very important. And so moving from advocacy to actually being in a position to make those decisions is what drives my whole campaign in running for judge.
So on the campaign, we were talking over dinner that you do a lot of education around the systems, voting, legal. For the listeners that may not know how our legal system's structured, can we go over that real
Sure.
quick? There's district courts and there's circuit courts, and then they exist in areas.
That's correct.
Or districts.
That's correct.
But you're running for circuit court. Can you describe kind of the difference between like what a district court does and what a circuit court does, or specifically what the bench that you're running for,
Yes.
what that court does?
So district courts, they are what I call on the lowest rung, so to speak. So district court handles traffic cases, misdemeanor criminal cases, even environmental cases, so like code enforcement cases, things like that. That's what district court handles.
We just saw a lot of that with the Little Rock, the loitering and
Yes, that's
some of
exactly
that.
right.
That's environmental court.
That's environmental court. That's exactly right. And not every county has an environmental court, you know, but that's all on the district court level. Circuit court is going to hear felony criminal cases, divorces, custody, child support, last will and testament, civil litigation, landlord-tenant, partition cases, illegal exaction, all this kind of stuff, administrative appeals when there's an administrative appeal to circuit court. So we call circuit courts courts of general jurisdiction, because they're going to hear the bigger part of those cases that come where the district court doesn't have jurisdiction, okay? In the seat that I'm running for is Pulaski County Circuit Court Division 5. And it comes from a sub-district, so it sits in a sub-district, I should say. You know how you have wards in the city?
Yes.
So judges, judicial seats are in 2 sub-districts in Pulaski County. So you have 6.1, which is a predominantly black sub-district, and you have 6.2, which is a predominantly white sub-district. There's a long history about how that happened, but it was a result of a lawsuit. And so there are just 2. So we don't call them wards, but that's what you can think of when you think about the sub-districts. And so this seat is the seat that Judge Griffin currently holds. And right now that docket is mainly criminal. So when cases come into the clerk's office, they're randomly assigned, but each division is given a docket of cases that is set by an administrative plan. So the judges get together and they basically kind of say, this judge is going to hear this kind of case or these types of cases. This judge is going to hear these types of cases. And so this particular seat right now hears criminal cases and a little bit of civil. Now, that doesn't mean that the seat will always hear those types of cases, because the administrative plan is reviewed every 2 years. So every 2 years, it may change. It may stay the same, but it may change.
Wow. You educated us.
Yeah, it's a lot of information.
How many circuit courts? So 6th District is kind of central Arkansas. Is that right?
I wouldn't even really say Central Arkansas. It's just Pulaski County. It's
just
Pulaski and Perry County, I should say
Okay.
that. Pulaski and Perry
And
County.
how many circuit court judges are there in?
17.
There's 17 circuit court judges.
Yes.
And that would be your juvenile court judges?
That includes, yep. So a lot of people, when you say juvenile court, they don't think circuit court. They think juvenile court. But juvenile court judges are
circuit court judges.
That is exactly right.
Okay.
And so there are 17 circuit court judges in the 6th Judicial District or Pulaski and Perry counties. And 5 of those 17 seats are in the 6.1 predominantly black subdistrict. And that's one of those seats are the seats that I'm running for, is the seat that I'm running for.
So we're actually looking at were there 6 circuit court judges elected?
You are good.
Last year or year
You are
before?
good. It was 2020.
2020, we had
And they
6
took the bench in 21.
And they took the bench in 21, and Prosecutor Jegley is retiring at the end of this year.
That's
is that right?
correct.
And so
And that election will be at the same time that the judges are voted on in May.
okay, and we need to cover that because most folks will roll out and vote in November during
Yeah.
a presidential election.
Yep.
Some will roll out every November
Mm-hmm.
when there's election, but the judges and the prosecutor will all be decided during the other people's primary. So the
Yes.
partisan, but
That's right.
But
in May.
if you want to make a difference in the way that the law is carried out here, we've got prosecutor and judges to elect, but it's in May.
That's exactly right. May 24th, 2022. May 24th,
My birthday,
2022.
May 25th.
Yes. So you can celebrate my win, right?
Yeah, with you.
Yeah, you make sure and text me, and we'll both be celebrating.
Right.
But yeah, May 24th, and then of course the 2 weeks prior to that is early voting. So it's coming fast.
Okay.
I'll be
It's
hearing
just
It
around
is
the
coming
corner.
fast.
it is. It really is.
Round the corner.
In fact, we have, and so in May, we will, during primaries, would be the general election for the seats and the prosecutor, but then we'll also decide governor
Yep.
on the partisan
That's
ticket.
right.
Many Democrats and some Republicans running,
Mm-hmm.
or have all the Republicans dropped out? Sarah Sanders may be the only Republican.
No, I think no. They have a
Does
primary.
she have a challenger in the primary? And so we've got we will have a lot of new elected officials in January of next year, including governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general at the state level, treasurer,
Secretary of State.
secretary of state.
So this is the most interesting thing, and this is another reason why I like to get this word out, because all of the constitutional offices, which are the ones you just named, every House seat, every Senate seat will be on the ballot. They're all up for reelection, or the seats are up for election, I should say. So when you think about the length of the ballot, you know, when I'm on the trail and I'm educating people, I tell them, you got to make sure and vote the down ballot. You got to vote down the whole ballot. And that's because some people may go in and they just may say, well, I came here to vote for LaTonya, and I'm going to vote for LaTonya, and then I'm going to get out. But like, you're missing all of those other seats that you can be voting on and should be voting on. And so it's so important that we try to do our research ahead of time to know exactly what's going to be on your specific ballot. And you can pull your own ballot. Like, a lot of people don't even know that. Like, there's a website that you can go to that will give you your sample ballot, like what you're going to see when you go in the booth. And it allows you to be able to do your research ahead of time. You can print it off, take it in the ballot box with you, and that way you're just marking them off, and you're not sitting there like really confused and stunned and, you know, taken aback and trying to figure out who is this and I don't remember what this was. You can take all of that in there with you and be one and done.
So voting in May, just like it's in the same spots that you vote in November. You know what I'm saying? Like libraries and
Yes.
you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, and so this is another interesting
I never
thing.
knew you voted in May.
I didn't either.
And you're not alone.
I did not know
And you're
that.
not alone.
Not many people
Never knew
vote in May
Yeah.
I don't know
compared
nobody that do.
to
I never
the
heard
general
my first
election
time
in
hearing
November.
of May
Yeah.
election.
Yeah, so here's the thing. You also got to remember that, you know, even with the news, like, people highlight what they want to highlight.
True.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, the partisan primary, if there hadn't been any primaries, like, and so we call it, like, you're not primaried. So if you don't have two Democrats running for the same seat during the partisan primary, then some people don't go out and vote because there's no need, because no one is challenging that particular individual. Yes, not realizing that there are other positions on the ballot. And so it's so super important to get that word out, because you start thinking about it and you're like, because I tell people, if you wait, like if you genuinely want to make the honorable choice and vote LaTonya Austin Honorable,
right,
you can't wait till November, because I won't be on there.
right.
It'll be over in May, so since our general is in May, if there were a runoff, which there won't be because there are only two candidates running for this seat, but if there were a runoff, then that would be in November. But if you wait till November of 22, you will not have made the honorable choice, because I will not be on the ballot. That would be very dishonorable. Yes.
So we got to get it done in May.
Yes.
Tell the people in May.
Yes.
Y'all
that's
get out
right.
here and vote. Y'all got to get out here and vote.
No,
in
for
May.
real.
You got to get out here and vote.
I'm thinking like, where you gonna go vote the whole time? So I'm like, man, where you gonna go vote at in May? Do it on the phone? What you supposed to do?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the same places like libraries, like Turtle was saying, libraries, and just the typical places you go and vote.
Yeah. So the election commission is, I guess, finalizing the precincts of where everybody's going to go vote, particularly because of redistricting. So because we just went, so every year after the census, the House districts are redrawn. That's what this whole redistricting thing is about. And so some of the precincts may change. And because people may not be willing to open their doors because of COVID or whatever, some precincts may close. And so they'll have to decide what those precincts are. But generally speaking, your libraries are going to be good places to go. And last election cycle was the first time that Pulaski County had vote centers. And that's different from precincts, because the way it used to be was you would vote, they have early vote sites, right? So that's typically like your libraries, like Sioux County Williams, Sid McMath, all those libraries would be early voting sites. Even the Pulaski County Administration Building, right here on the corner of Broadway and Markham. So you would have these early vote sites, but then on election day, you would have to go vote at your precinct. That's the way it used to be. Last year was the first time that we had vote centers, and what that means is you could go to any one of the vote centers regardless of where you lived. You wouldn't have to wait and go to your precinct. So say, for instance, your precinct is in Sherwood, and you work in Little Rock, and you're, maybe you're the type that you like to vote on election day. Maybe that's just your routine. Well, with the vote center, you would vote, say you could vote at the Pulaski County Administration Building because it's a vote center. You wouldn't have to wait and drive back to Sherwood and vote at your precinct. You could vote at any one of those vote centers. So, and that's a big deal, because it also increases the chances that people will get out and vote. Because if you have to wait and go to your precinct, lines are long, as opposed to going to a vote center where you can just go in any one of those locations and you can get in and get out. So definitely some changes being made.
A lot of JPs up.
Yes.
And so I guess what we're saying, if you don't hear anything else, is like it's important to vote in May.
It is. It really is.
If you live in Pulaski County, we're going to have judges and a prosecutor, and we'll have JP. Now, JP sits on the board. The county has a board that decides how you're going to allocate money, and who you're going to hire and what you're going to focus on, and the justice of the peace makes that decision. They are the board of the county.
That is exactly
and
right.
We've got folks running for that. So
since we're educating, so here's another little tidbit. So we have so I'm running for circuit judge, right? We have a county judge. But the person who is the county judge is not really a judge, is not a judicial officer. The county judge is the highest ranking official in terms of the money of the county. They govern, that individual governs the money of the county. How, like Paul said, how that money is distributed, along with, the justices of the peace who actually vote on those decisions. But it's misleading, right? So if you don't know that that's who that is,
right,
you often, a lot of people think that the county judge is an actual judicial officer.
I would have thought that.
You're not alone. You're right. So, you call a judge, you call a spade,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? But the county judge, our current county judge is Barry Hyde. But Barry Hyde is not a judicial officer. Barry Hyde is the highest ranking official in terms of handling fiscal matters around the county.
So he's like a manager.
Basically.
An executive officer.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he's your CEO of the county.
Yeah.
This is like a business, right?
It's a,
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like your city manager.
Right.
But for the county, that's
But
exactly
for the
right.
county, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like you
we don't know
educating us
nothing
all
about this
night.
part of the game. You giving it to us.
Yeah, you give it to us.
I'm trying.
You educating us. You educating us. I'm lost.
Oh, my mind right now.
Yeah, the big deal is that, everyone, rich, poor, you got one vote.
Right.
Yep.
And especially the more local the election gets, the more impact one vote has.
Yep.
And many of these local elections will be decided with less than 100 votes.
Right.
Can be.
There was a special election for a House of Representative here in Pulaski County during the last election cycle, or I guess it was a special election, so it wasn't necessarily in that cycle, was decided by one vote. And that one vote was from overseas.
What?
Military vote.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It was an absentee ballot.
Is that Ashley
That wasn't Ashley Hudson's seat.
Hudson?
That
But
was,
hers were a few votes also.
yeah, and
though.
there were several recounts. It was a whole big lawsuit. It was a whole big thing about that. But yes, so that one was Representative Joyce Springer
Okay.
and Ryan Davis was the opponent in that
Okay.
election. Yeah.
No, I
so
didn't hear about that one.
Yeah, when you talk about the power of a vote and you start hearing people say, my vote doesn't matter, I just tell them lies, like, miss me with all that. I don't want to hear all that.
Right.
Like, because I know.
But I've thought that
Vote
way.
does matter.
I thought that way that my vote is really.
And so let's talk about
I'm
it.
glad you brought that
So
up.
The game's played by the people that show up.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Like, you won't get a chance to bat if you don't show up.
Right.
You won't get a chance to hit a home run if you don't show up. You gotta show up. And then sometimes you may not be having your best day, but what if the people that you're playing against, what if they're having a worse day? You may not be on point for you, but if they're having a worse day than you are, guess what? You might be able to make it around the whole field without even, being on point because you showed up. Just simply because you showed up and played the game. And so when you start talking about my vote doesn't matter and all that, I'll share with you a story. This was in 2018. And I was actually on a trip with my husband. And I got a phone call from someone who said, hey, I need your help. Young man just got out of prison. All he wants to do is register to vote before the registration deadline is here. And this was like 2 days before the deadline. Because he had been incarcerated and he didn't know, how to navigate all of the registration requirements and all that, he needed help. So I said, well, shoot me his name, let me reach out to him, and let me see what I can do. Now, I'm not here, but by this time, it's a lot of stuff you can do by email, phone call, and all that. Well, this young man had been incarcerated in the Arkansas Department of Corrections on a homicide offense. He served his time flat, and he was actually released because of laws changing in terms of juveniles being sentenced to certain offenses, and I'm sure y'all heard about all that. Well, so he walked out flat. A lot of people don't know that when your right to vote is taken from you because of a felony conviction, you can get that right back. Yep. There are some steps to take, but you can get that right back.
Come on now, help us now.
So what happens is when you fully discharge your sentence, which means, so if you're on probation, you owe fines, fees, court costs, once you've done all of that, you can restore your right to vote. You have to get a letter of discharge.
You said probation. That's not if you've been on parole.
Yeah. So probation means you haven't been to prison. For those of you who don't know, parole is where you've been sentenced to ADC time, and you're out and you're still under supervision. Right. But once you fully discharge that sentence, or once you're off paper, once you've paid all your fines, fees, restitution, whatever you were ordered, then you can restore your right to vote.
How do you do that?
Come on now.
So you get a letter of discharge. So if you went to ADC, get a letter of discharge from the ADC or your supervising officer if you were on parole. If you're on probation, you get a letter of discharge from probation parole. And you take that along with your driver's license. You fill out the voter registration card, and that's all. Take that to the registrar's office, and you register to vote like anyone else. That is essentially restoring your voting rights. So this young man, now, he'll never be able to get that. You can't get a homicide offense sealed from your record, but that does not keep you from restoring your voting rights. And that's one of the most important things. And so when I talk to people now, there's an organization that I have called Voter EMT, a state of emergency. Voter education, voter motivation, voter transportation. That's voter EMT, voter education, voter motivation, voter transportation. So when I would encounter people who might say, well, my vote doesn't count, I challenge them to think, well, let's think about how your vote does count. The people who make the rules, and we're talking about the branches of government, the people who make the rules, they're the legislators. The legislators are individuals. The legislature is the whole body, right? So the legislature is the one who makes the laws. If you want to change a law, the best way to do that is to become involved in the process and cast your vote for the legislator who best aligns with what you feel.
Right.
That is how you become motivated to vote. So for instance, prime example. So there used to be a law that, if you were convicted of a sealable offense, and I'll just use theft of property as an example. Right. So if you were convicted of theft of property, and let's say, Paul, you got convicted of theft of property and you were sentenced to ADC.
Wasn't me.
Finally got him like you supposed to.
Right. You got found out. So if you were sentenced to ADC and you were sentenced to probation, all right? Paul, you couldn't get your theft of property sealed, but you could. Because you were sentenced to.
I did time.
You did time.
You behind
That's the only difference.
That sucks.
Tell me about it. That's the only difference. But during the last legislative cycle, there is a group called Americans for Prosperity. I was invited in to have this discussion with them on criminal justice reform and all of that. And we worked together to come up with a bill that allowed for individuals who were sentenced to the Arkansas Department of Corrections for an otherwise sealable offense, that they are eligible to get their record sealed. Now, think about this. Most of the people who were getting sentenced to Arkansas Department of Corrections were black and brown people, poor people, those groups of people. Right. And then for them to turn around and get out and still not be able to get that record sealed.
Like a slap in the face. It's like a slap in the face.
It's hard to find housing. It's hard to find jobs. All of that. Absolutely.
Especially housing. They do not like
set up.
Yes.
You know, that may be where we know each other, because I've worked with Ryan Norris over at AFP too.
You have?
Yes.
That's it.
Last legislative session, Ryan and Americans for Prosperity helped us give judges on the bench the ability to issue a temporary driver's license to people that are in their court that have a suspended.
Yes.
And so they can, because the people drove to court anyway.
Right.
I mean, this is a real dilemma.
That's
Someone's doing, otherwise they're doing good. And a parole officer, they don't want to know if you drove up for your parole meeting.
Right, correct.
If you're working and you're doing everything else, they just, what are you going to do?
Right.
And so it poses a real dilemma. And plus in Arkansas, if you don't have a car, it's very, very difficult.
Yes.
Very difficult
to get around, because public transportation isn't sufficient in most of Arkansas to be able to get you to work and kids to school and so all that.
Right.
So, so now parole officers and judges, because of Americans for Prosperity, have the ability to issue one of their clients a temporary driver's license.
That's exactly right.
But
awesome.
That was all AFP.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
That's good that you were.
That's what's up.
I
didn't even know that. Though.
We had to be up at Ryan's office one time together. That's probably how we met.
That's funny.
Yes. It is important to vote. I used to be one of them people, and I still can't vote at this moment, but I know it's very important to vote. And a lot of people don't look at it like that, to look at who in our city. And like even I did some research on you, watch your videos and stuff. I see you and Uncle T's and all that.
You did do some research.
Yeah, I was just saying when you went to school, how you talk, want to know that stuff. And if I could vote, you a hack. For real, like you don't know people and they just go up there and vote. I just say, but it's good to look into that and find out. And I say, if you got a chance to vote, go vote for the honorable.
That part.
For the honorable. For real.
That part.
A lot of people don't know voting.
So you got honorable from marriage, right?
I did.
So you didn't have. You just kind of took it from your husband, right?
No, he tried to do that.
No,
He tried to do that.
Yeah, well, so this is what I tell people. I was very blessed because, and that was actually my second marriage. So, which is where the Austin comes in. So my maiden name is Laird. So I was born LaTonya Laird, Laird.
Okay.
And because I'm from here, most people know me by LaTonya Laird, but my first married name, Austin, so people knew me by LaTonya Laird Austin. And so all of those names actually hold a special significance. But I got remarried in 2017, and I married a wonderful man by the name of Lee Honorable.
Okay.
And that's where my last name comes from.
So if you won, you would be the honorable.
I would. Yes.
Man, she milking that brother.
The
running with
double honors.
It'd be dishonorable. Dishonorable if you don't vote.
Right, that part. So, but yes, the honorable.
That's funny.
That's funny. Very funny. But you a marketing genius, though. You marketed that.
Hey, sometimes it just comes on me. It comes to me.
Yes.
So if you were to win the bench, tell us a little bit about kind of your campaign. What's important to you?
Right.
So the driving force, right? I call it my 3D platform. And I came up with this platform based on my personal experience, based on my professional experience as a prosecutor, a public defender, private defense attorney, handling all the cases that I mentioned earlier, family law cases, probate, guardianship, adoptions, all those things. One of the things that I realized was sometimes you as an attorney, you're not really able to put on the best case for your client because sometimes the judges, they don't want to hear it. They're short-tempered. They, what I call cut you off at the knees because they say, well, we don't have time for all that, or, I don't want to hear all of that. But what I also saw was people who couldn't afford an attorney would come in and they would be treated like attorneys, which technically is what is supposed to happen, I guess, because you decide not to have representation. But sometimes that's not really a choice, right? Sometimes you don't really choose not to have representation.
Right. You just can't get it.
You just can't get it, right? So what I started finding was judges have a lot of discretion. It's a fancy word for wiggle room. Judges have a lot of wiggle room that is built into the law. It's not anything that they're doing wrong, but judges have a lot of discretion.
By design.
By design, that's exactly right. And so this 3D platform, using judicial discretion to decrease the negative perception of the bench while rendering fair and equitable disposition of cases. So let me break that down a little bit.
Help us out.
Using wiggle room that help change people's minds about this whole judicial system. And the way you do that is by being fair and equitable and disposing of those cases the way they should be disposed of.
Right.
Let me make it live this way. Let's say I gave everybody at this table a size 11, all black LeBron James. Now, by show of hands,
It's not fair.
who can do anything with that shoe?
Probably Turk.
One.
I can't get my foot in
Me
it.
neither.
Can't get your foot in it.
Too big for me.
Too big for you.
Definitely too big for me.
Too big for you. Do you like the color black on your feet? You like black
I
shoes?
love
I do.
You like black tennis shoes?
I don't have any.
Okay.
don't know.
See, but the
You give
point,
me a size 12 and a half, and I tell you,
Yeah, right.
I'll pick them up tomorrow.
Precisely the point,
Right.
and that is,
Can't do nothing with 11.
I tell people equality is overrated. Think about it, and listen to what I'm saying before you pass judgment. Y'all too. Equality is overrated because I've treated everyone at this table
Really.
equally. But it's not equitable because it's not fair.
Come on. Now.
If I give you that shoe and you can't wear the shoe, that's not fair to you.
No.
I have to be willing to listen to what you're telling me, understand what makes it fair to you, listen to the circumstances around your life. You know, your toes might not need to be in a tennis shoe. Like, your toes might be like mine sometimes be like, I need a peep toe. Because I can't always wear a closed toe.
Right.
Maybe you need some slides. Maybe you don't really feel like a tennis shoe today. Another example, you know what I'm saying? You don't like slides. So if I'm not willing to listen to the situation and circumstances around your life and around how you got in this system to begin with, and make a fair decision based on that, I haven't treated you equitably.
Come on now.
I haven't done what's fair to you. I haven't done anything to improve your quality of life. Maybe I haven't done anything that really makes, if we're dealing with a situation where there's a victim, maybe I hadn't made a ruling that is fair to the victim based on what the defendant has done. Maybe I've set child support too high because even though the child support chart says that you're supposed to pay this amount, but you're barely making your ends meet, and that's going to end up putting you in a situation where you're in contempt of court for not paying, not because you don't want to pay, but because maybe you can't pay. Taking into account all of those situations are things that make decisions equitable. It's not just a cookie cutter approach, because equality is essentially a cookie cutter approach. You treat everybody the same.
No matter the situation.
No matter the situation.
Right.
That doesn't always work.
So don't.
It doesn't always work.
It's tight, but it's right.
To me,
That part.
To me, it usually doesn't work because it's all situations are different.
That's
like
right.
you're saying.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adjust
Right.
in each moment.
Yes.
And especially in the law where people's lives, you can be put in jail and
Life.
money's a factor. So it's very important on that level.
That's right.
So I like what you're talking
We've worked with a number of district court judges where I see this kind of play out, the equitable part play out. When someone would get a speeding ticket, let's say they got a $250 fine. So I got a speeding ticket, $250, and one of our clients got $250. I get mad because I didn't want to spend my $250, but I write the check anyway. And I send it in, and I'm mad because my insurance goes up, but they don't have $250 to send in. Because if they write the $250, they can't pay rent. And so they don't. And they don't show up because they're embarrassed and they think they're going to get thrown in jail, which is not the right thing to do, because as soon as they don't show up, they get a FTA, a failure to appear, and a failure to pay.
This is where you help the preacher. Paint the picture, Paul.
Come on.
Paint the picture, sir.
So
do your work, press your way.
So now that you got a suspended driver's license, you got a warrant out for your arrest, and you can go for a year, but now you're collecting fees and fines. So it starts to build.
Set you up.
That's
And
exactly
so
right.
what some judges have done that we've been able to help them with is now look at someone who can't pay and to be able to offer an alternative. And so in Van Buren and Crawford County, Dr. Debbie Falbus and her group over at the Adult Ed, and then Judge Baker over there, have had hundreds. In fact, I would say that since we partnered with them over the last 3 years, thousands of individuals. Half don't have GEDs when we meet them. And over 60% of them don't have any income and no job. But instead of just saying, well, you got to figure it out, pay the fee or the fine, right? And you got to do some jail time. Instead, they're allowed to go over to Dr. Falbus and her crew, and they're getting everybody full-time jobs. They're getting them GEDs. And then they pay some of those fees and fines back. They'll pay like the original, and the judge will use his discretion appropriately. But people's lives are much better, and the community is much better because they were able to address core issues at some folks instead of just having them pay the $250 like I would. I would have been all mad and I got caught, or I don't think I was going that fast, whatever it was, right? But they can't. But instead, the judge is using his discretion to make the community better and a more just place.
That's exactly right. Very good point, Paul. So on point.
Wow.
So how would you do that? What I've not seen it really done. So I see that in many Searcy Court, White County District Court, the Crawford County District Court, some of the Sebastian County District Courts in Fort Smith.
Yes.
Those judges are doing the same thing, but I've not seen it work kind of in a circuit court. So what does that look like?
So circuit court judges still address bail issues, and bail and bond is another one of those areas where discretion plays a huge role. I'll come back to that in just a second. But on the circuit court level in criminal cases, they still have to deal with bond issues because remember I told you circuit courts deal with felony cases, right? So you start in district court, maybe you get arrested and you go for your first appearance where the court addresses bail. If you can't make bail, then bail might have to be addressed in circuit court when the case is filed directly in circuit court, once the felony gets in circuit court. Or if there's a revocation, maybe you're placed on probation and you get revoked. There's a petition to revoke your probation. The circuit court, because remember the district court doesn't have jurisdiction, so the circuit court still has to address bail pending the revocation hearing. So the court can address it that way. Then you talk about discretion just in sentencing. You know what I'm saying? Where maybe someone did plead guilty because maybe they were really guilty. But the judge has so much discretion. Like, how many of you know that there's like a sentence there's a guideline? Like there's a book. Yeah, there's a book that says if you commit this offense and you have this criminal history, you are charted out like a child support chart. It's a numbers game. You are charted out right here. So the legislature who came up with this in conjunction with the Sentencing Commission, yes, thank you, comes up with this book, and this is where this book says you should. Now, it could be a mixture. Like there could be a recommendation of penitentiary time. We call it alternative sanctions, which is probation, CCC, which is your community correction centers. You know, the judge can do any of those things. But if we use a cookie cutter approach and always sentence people to the penitentiary without exercising the discretion in using some of those alternative sanctions or things like that, we're still using that cookie cutter approach. And there is not a way that you can say that that's fair. That's just not fair.
I think it's wrong, dead wrong.
So the bedrock of my campaign is equity, discretion, decrease, and disposition.
And that's why you should vote for the Honorable.
Yes, that is why. I mean, because that
don't
kind of
get
stuff,
no better.
Yeah.
Real deal. Right here, Little Rock Bound, Central High.
That part.
Right.
It doesn't change. And that's the thing I love about the consistency with which I've been running, which is I didn't come up with that platform because it sounded good. Right. I came up with the platform because that's what I was seeing that needed to be addressed in the system, which is why when I didn't win the first time, I didn't change my platform. I didn't win the second time, didn't change my platform because those issues still need to be addressed.
So do.
And you stand on a nice platform.
Thank you.
Get some probation sometimes.
Yeah, I would vote for you.
Thank
And
you.
you most
I would vote for
definitely are a believer, right?
I am.
So before we shut this thing up, we're most definitely gonna pray.
I like
It's
it.
already done.
And we really
I
appreciate you
appreciate
coming on the show
Yeah.
and blessing us with this knowledge and this understanding of
Yes,
the law.
of the law,
You
yes.
and Paul knows something
Yes.
about the law.
Empowering our environment.
Yeah, it was good to be with all y'all and
Yes.
decent to be with
and
Mac.
Yeah. I knew it was coming.
You just enlightened us and a lot
Kinda
of
love that,
listeners of
too.
some things we didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, even when we were over dinner, when we were talking,
Yeah.
I mean, just still learning, educating myself, finding ways that restore hope, and I mean, just all of these opportunities. I call it an arsenal. Judges have an arsenal of tools that can be used to render these equitable decisions, and I put some more stuff in the arsenal today, learning and talking with Paul.
In being able to work with law enforcement officers and judges, Chief Baker in Fort Smith hit me with something several years ago when we were building our first model there. He said, Paul, we've, as law enforcement and as judges, we've always had discretion, but we've never had options. And so it becomes very difficult to exercise your discretion if you don't have options.
Right.
And so part of what Restore Hope wants to do is work with communities to provide more options for judges and law enforcement officers so they can exercise their discretion.
I love that.
And like you're saying, we can't just send everybody to prison.
Prison show came.
The prison's already full. Like you're gonna want them overflowing, like over people hanging out the
Right.
windows.
They not full yet.
Come on,
They not full yet. but
And
they-
some people
Yeah,
just
in a
need
minute-
help, though,
in a
you know.
minute, they gonna open up.
Besides the pen, like they might have a bad drug problem.
Yeah.
We learned about trauma.
Yeah.
It's stuff people going
Been
through. and-
molested.
Yeah,
And anything can
prison
happen
ain't
to people.
just
Trauma.
always the answer for people.
Right.
Some people really need other type of help.
And I will also say this, because I believe in a balance. And I think that's another thing that has equipped me to be ripe for this seat. Some people need to be in prison.
Sure
Yes.
do.
Yes.
Let me be very clear.
Yes, sir.
Some people need to be there.
Right.
So when I talk about discretion, don't misunderstand what I'm saying and think I mean leniency.
Come on now.
That's not
Right is right,
always
wrong
the
is
case.
Sure is.
You have to take into account all the circumstances,
And you have to be accountable.
and you have to be accountable.
Right.
So
I agree.
hear me, but don't misunderstand.
But do
Right.
judges read like the history of the whole case, like what's going on? And
They listen to the lawyers, don't
because
they?
Right.
Which is why you have to have a good advocate.
Right.
You know, judges can't do like their own research on a
No.
case and all of that.
They just listen
They
to the
listen to what is presented to them by the advocate. That's right.
Right.
I watched a show called Goliath with Billy Bob Thornton. Oh, that's
I
a
wanna
whole
watch
show.
that.
I done watched 2 seasons of it.
Wait, is it on Netflix now?
No, it's on Prime,
Hulu?
Amazon Prime.
On Prime.
Oh, it's called.
I love Billy
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, I do.
Listen,
Man, and he's such an intense lawyer, and he does the research that he does makes him win every time because nobody goes as deep as he goes to find out the end. He goes to the bottom of the river, like everywhere to get.
You know what that's called? So have y'all ever heard this? He who owns the gold makes the rule.
Yeah.
This is what I say. He who knows the rules wins the game.
That's true.
Right.
But that's true. Every
Yes.
time. Ooh,
I know the rules. I'm winning, baby.
Man, we thank you so much for delivering this because, yeah, we got to go.
Gotta
It's
go.
deep, though, but we got to go.
Yes.
Well, before we shut down on this good, beautiful Tuesday night, we want to thank you again.
Thank you, Miss
for
Honorable.
coming.
Thank
It
you,
is
Miss
an
Honorable.
honor to have you. And if you can you bow your heads for a moment of silence for a word of prayer? Father God, we come to you first and foremost. Want to thank you for another beautiful day you have allowed us to see. Thank you for waking us up today, God. But we also want to take this time out to pray for the Honorable Lord, Miss LaTonya Austin, Lord. Let her please get this position. I believe that it's already done because you know she's the right one for the seat. God, she has put in the work. She has lived a life and she's walking the walk. So God, I pray that you just do what you need to do and let people go out and vote in May like they need to for this woman to be our judge. It's in your most holy name we pray and declare and decree that it's already done. In your mighty name, amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Woo-woo, and another exciting episode and show of the EME podcast.
You don't make it like a scary movie. Man, get out of here.
The Mac has spoken. Paul is leaving. Thank God.
Thank God.
Thank God. Paul is leaving.